Paul George just got hit with a 25-game suspension, but now he's apologizing, and some say he's naming names behind the scenes.
Paul George, the NBA suspended him 25 games for violating the league's anti-drug program.
You took some enhancement drugs to make you better on the court, but then you blame it on mental health.
Paul George just got hit with a 25-game suspension. He's out there apologizing and talking about mental health medication. But behind the scenes, the NBA reportedly offered him a deal if he named names. So who are they really after? Let's break it down. Paul George, a 9-time All-Star and the player Philly paid over $200 million to lead the team, is now suspended without pay for 25 games. This isn't a small penalty. This is a first violation of the NBA's anti-drug program, and it's a huge hit for him and the 76ers. The suspension was announced on January 31st, 2026, and started immediately with Philly's game against the Pelicans that same night. Imagine getting ready to play, and the next thing you know, the league tells you to stay home for 2.5 months. That's exactly what happened. Here's the twist. The NBA never disclosed what substance he tested positive for, and they rarely do. The details are confidential under NBA policy, but what we do know is that a 25-game suspension usually lines up with violations for performance-enhancing drugs, steroids, peptides, SARMs, or other banned substances. And no, it's not marijuana. The NBA removed cannabis from its banned list in 2023. Whatever Paul George took, the league sees it as a serious violation. Things get even more interesting. After the announcement, Paul George spoke to ESPN's Shams Charania. He said that over the past few years, he's talked about mental health, and while seeking treatment for his own issue, he took the wrong medication by mistake. He took full responsibility, accepted the consequences, and apologized to his family, the 76ers, his teammates, and the fans. He also said he will keep focusing on his mental health and come back a better player in person. Bottom line, Paul George is framing this as a mental health situation. He says he made a mistake while seeking treatment, and that's how he ended up here. Paul George has been open about his mental health struggles before. On his podcast, he's talked about anxiety and depression during the 2020 NBA bubble and after playoff losses. So this isn't coming out of nowhere. But here's where it gets interesting. The timing of all this is really suspicious. Just a few days before the suspension, on January 28th, Paul George had a monster game against the Bucks. 32 points and 9 three-pointers. 9 threes. Remember, this is a player who's been battling injuries all season, playing only 27 games and missing 20. Then suddenly he drops 32 points like he's in his prime. Former NBA player Gilbert Arenas and his podcast co-hosts even pointed out how suspicious that performance looked to the league.
So last Tuesday against the Bucks, PG had 35, 5-5, hit 9 threes.
Yeah, that got him tested.
And then ended up getting suspended a few days later on that Saturday.
He's been injured for so long, you know.
Some people think that big game might have triggered extra scrutiny from the league. When a player suddenly performs way above their recent track record, the NBA starts asking questions. And apparently, those questions led to answers Paul George didn't want anyone to find. Now let's talk money, because the numbers are huge. Paul George signed a 4-year, $212 million contract with the 76ers in 2024. His 2025-26 salary is around $51.7 million, which breaks down to about $469,000 per game. With 25 games suspended, that means he's losing roughly $1.7 million in salary. Just gone, over one mistake. Paul George is 35 years old, has battled injuries his whole career, and now he has to sit at home while his team fights for a playoff spot without him. Paul George's suspension will keep him out until March 25th, 2026, when Philly hosts the Bulls. That means he'll only be eligible for the final 10 regular season games. 10 games to try to get back in a rhythm before the playoffs. You could see the time of the announcement. The 76ers were 26-21, 6th in the East, and on a 4-game winning streak. With Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey playing well, they looked like legitimate contenders. Now, 1/3 of their big three is gone for almost 3 months. You can't make this up. That here's something many people don't know. The NBA's anti-drug program allows a therapeutic use exemption. If a player has a legitimate medical need for a banned substance, They can apply for this and use it legally. This is common for ADHD meds or other treatments. Apparently, Paul George did not get one. He just took the medication without clearing it with the league first, and that's what got him into trouble. But here's what's really sparking debate. Paul George says this was about mental health medication, but he never said exactly what he took or how it broke the rules. He just called it an improper medication. That vagueness has left people scratching their heads, wondering what really happened. Many don't buy the mental health excuse. The reactions have been explosive. Media personalities, former players, analysts, and fans are all weighing in. Not everyone is convinced. For example, sports commentators Donnie and Joe from Sports Grid didn't hold back. They went straight at him over his statement.
Just admit it. Just admit it. You're getting older here. You're feeling the weight of that contract. You want to make sure that you're a good player on the Philadelphia 76ers. You took some enhancement drugs to make you better on the court, but then you blame it on mental health.
On Inside the NBA, Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley expressed surprise at the news. Barkley, in particular, pointed out that the league has historically been lenient on marijuana, but the rules are stricter for other substances now. He called the situation fishy. And when Charles Barkley says something is fishy, people listen. He knows the league inside and out. Meanwhile, Stephen A. Smith on First Take called this a major blow to the 76ers' championship hopes, and he's right. This team was expected to compete for a title, and now they have to survive 25 games without one of their top players. That's not something you can just ignore. The front office must be furious. Former players like Jeff Teague also expressed skepticism, suggesting that George's recent high-scoring game may have triggered league red flags. He questioned whether mental health medications, like antipsychotics or ADHD treatments, should result in such a harsh penalty if they're not explicitly performance-enhancing. That's a fair point. If a player is genuinely seeking treatment, should they be punished this severely? The Sports Grid hosts continued their criticism, saying this mental health excuse is going to follow Paul George for the rest of his career.
I mean, it's not
Mental health.
rocket science here. I mean, the fact that he deflected it and made it about mental health was just crazy. Just own it and move on, because, Donnie, nobody will care in another week, and that'll be the end of it. But
On the Speakeasy podcast, the hosts were even more blunt. They called Paul George's explanation full of it, accusing him of cheating with performance-enhancing drugs and using mental health as a cover story. That's a serious accusation, but it reflects what many people are thinking privately. When you release a vague statement that doesn't really explain anything, people will fill in the blanks themselves, and usually they won't give you the benefit of the doubt. That on Nightcap, host Shannon Sharp and Chad Osenko-Johnson debated the mental health angle. Sharp showed some sympathy for George, but also stressed that accountability matters. You can feel bad for someone and still hold them responsible for their actions. That on the Speakeasy podcast, the hosts were even more blunt. They called Paul George's explanation full of it, accusing him of cheating with performance-enhancing drugs and using mental health as a cover story. That's a serious accusation, but it reflects what many people are thinking privately. When you release a vague statement that doesn't really explain anything, people will fill in the blanks themselves, and usually they won't give you the benefit of the doubt. That on Nightcap, host Shannon Sharp and Chad Osenko-Johnson debated the mental health angle. Sharp showed some sympathy for George, but also stressed that accountability matters. You can feel bad for someone and still hold them responsible for their actions. Speculation about what substance Paul George took has been running wild. Many fans and analysts think it could be a stimulant like Adderall, which is banned without a therapeutic use exemption. Players can apply for these exemptions if they have a legitimate medical need, but apparently, George didn't get one. Others are pointing to traditional performance-enhancing drugs, given his age and recent dips in performance. On social media, people have even started calling him PDP or Prescription P. Clever, but probably not nicknames he wants. Analysts like Rhea Hughes criticized George for not consulting his agent or the league before taking a medication, and that's a fair point. These players have team doctors, medical staff, and resources most people can only dream of. If you're going to take any medication, especially when you know you're subject to drug testing, you need to make sure it's approved. That's just common sense.